Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me for this live webinar. Today we are talking about winter smart lawn fertilisers. I've got a bit of a frog in my throat, so if I need to clear that occasionally. So my name is Daisy Lacey. You might have watched one of my other webinars before. You might have spoken to me before. I work for a company called GreenBest, and we are a fertiliser manufacturer. And Smart Lawn we're going to talk about today is a range of fertilisers for smart lawn care professionals. That is the guys, with the lawn care businesses that are treating gardens all year round. And obviously we need to treat lawns through the winter to keep them looking green. So we're going to think about that today. If you have to leave the webinar halfway through, don't worry, you'll be emailed a link to watch the whole thing back again, probably in a couple of hours' time. If you leave it past the point at which that link is available to use, don't worry, because it will then be going on to the GreenBest Academy, and I'll talk you through where that is and how to find that a bit later on. So if you have any questions whilst the webinar is live, if you're watching right now, then please pop them in the chat. You can also say hello in the chat, let us know where you're from and what company you run. And if you have any comments as we go along, you can include those. That'd be really good. I'll have a look. If there's any questions that need answering, I'll do that as we go or at the end. And my colleague Kerry, who you might know, is also in the chat, and she can also answer some questions as we go along. So let's begin. Bring my slides up. Righty-ho, so winter fertilisers. Again, GreenBest is a company that manufactures fertiliser. We specialise in fertilisers for turf. That's mostly sports and amenity fertiliser, but lawn care is something we've been doing for at least, well, over 2 decades now. It's quite a comfortable area for us. We supply quite a lot of independent lawn care companies. So it's something that we're quite used to doing. The Smart Lawn range, if you don't know about it already, is a sort of short list of fertilisers developed by myself in association with our customers. So for many years, they were buying the same sorts of things, and we kind of created this very easy to understand list so that people who are new to the industry or customers that are new to GreenBest could come along and say, okay, this is very simple, this is what I need. And these new sort of webinars are something that we do to help people understand the products, to choose the right products for them. Sometimes it's just a very good way of getting a lot of information across very quickly. So we're talking about winter fertilizers today. We've already done one of these on spring and summer. And we've already done one autumn. So here we go. So we're going to first talk about what is a winter fertiliser. So what actually makes a winter fertiliser and what sets them apart from spring and summer fertilisers, for example. We'll look at the Smart Lawn products that can be used as winter fertilisers, the other treatments that you should be doing in the winter time, and then where to find more information. And a really good handy thing to have, if you don't have it already, is one of our Smart Lawn product guides. It's a physical sort of brochure, if you like. You can get one of those if you go to the GreenBest website, which is www.greenbest.co.uk/smartlawn. There is a button there to request a free product guide. You click that and put your details in, then we will post you out a copy of this. You can request a PDF version if you want, but the physical one's quite good. I suggest you make some notes around it, or there's a notes page at the back, and just sort of scribble all over it, make notes. It's really useful to have a physical copy. So that's where you can get a lot of individual product information if you want it after this webinar. So the winter fertilisers. Winter fertilisers generally are very low in nitrogen. And this is because when you put nitrogen down the ground, it causes grass to grow. Grass has this relationship with nitrogen where it will just use up as much of it as it can, as fast as it can. Nitrogen in natural systems is quite hard to come by. It's sort of produced by some bacteria when it's breaking down organic matter. Some bacteria transform nitrogen in the air to nitrogen in the soil. It's something that's not around a lot, and it tends to leach out of the soil quite quickly. So plants, when they see it, they just grab it. So the more nitrogen you put on grass, the faster it grows. And we see this in the spring with high nitrogen fertilizers. So with a winter fertilizer, we tend to go with the lower nitrogen. So it's usually around 5% nitrogen, 10% at the most. So something like 6, 5, 10. It's a classic winter NPK. You can, if you want, drop the nitrogen altogether. That's completely up to you. And obviously you can do other things to make the grass green, like we'll add iron and magnesium, etc. So the key thing really is just low nitrogen. If you put a lot of nitrogen on the grass towards the end of autumn, too early in the spring or in the winter, and you get that forced green growth that we call soft growth, that can be quite susceptible to diseases. So things like sort of fungal diseases where the grass will grow, that soft growth is very weak, it's not very strong, so it's much more likely to get those. Sometimes this time of year specifically, you might have red thread. That's okay. The general treatment for that is to put some nitrogen down. It's okay to do that to get the grass to grow, to get that red thread affected area gone, but you don't want to do that too late in the season. So it needs to be when the grass is actively growing. So about now is fine. The temperatures are not too bad. Once it starts to get frosty, you definitely need to stay away from the nitrogen then. So winter fertilisers are generally used from October through to February. Once we get through to sort of March, we're looking at more like spring fertilisers, especially in the south. Obviously, all of this depends on where you are in the country. So if you're in Scotland, for example, it will get cooler faster than it would in the south, and also would get warm up a bit slower. So you have to sort of take where you are in the UK and judge your application timings according to the temperature. A lot of it is going to be based around first and last frost dates, because you want to sort of avoid putting too much down when it's going to be frosty. The whole point of a winter fertilizer is that we're trying to maintain colour through the winter. We're trying to make sure that we keep that sort of green colour without getting too much growth, and also preparing the lawn for growth in the spring, preventing the diseases, preparing it for the winter, the harsh winter and all the frost and potential snow and everything else. So it's about just sort of preparation and colour maintenance. So if we have a look at some of the actual products that we sell. So first and last is our classic winter fertiliser that we've been selling for well over 2 decades, possibly more like 2.5 decades. So it's a 6-5-10. It comes with 6% iron or without 6% iron. So you can decide whether you want to blacken with that or not. A lot of people, as we come on to in a little bit, prefer to use iron as a liquid treatment. So in that case, a 6-5-10 without, that's fine. We've always done this sort of with or without option. It just gives a lot of flexibility. So 6-5-10 is a really classic 4 to 6 week release. You can pop that on in November. That should be fine. You can pop that on probably late January. I would avoid the really hard frost periods for applications. Obviously, you don't want to be walking over a lawn and applying any fertilizer when it's frosty, because that damages the grass as well. And if we have any snow, like on the way in like the next few weeks from when you want to apply this, then it's probably best not to do that either. So it's quite a good one. This is low nitrogen fertilizer for the winter, but obviously you have to take into account the weather. The application rate, unit size, etc. I've got all here. The inputs, if you're planning your annual program around your total inputs, the input quantities are there. And the graph on the left-hand side here, it sort of shows you how the release pattern is. So this is a 4 to 6 week product. This is not one of our longer term releases. In the winter, grass doesn't tend to grow very fast. Obviously, the temperature drops. The biological processes that cause growth in the grass tend to slow down quite a lot. So a 4 to 6 week release is fine. Most clay soils will hold on to nutrients for a longer time. If you have very sandy soil in your area, you might want to either up the application rate or stick an extra treatment in on the other side of Christmas. You know, it just depends sort of on what your soil type is like. Sandy soil leaches nutrients quite quickly. So if you were to put this down in the next few weeks, for example, by the time we get to late January, it will be totally gone. You want to put something else on. So for most clay lawn soils, this is a lovely thing for now. So this is a classic autumn winter fertilizer. You can also use this very early in the spring to get the grass greening up just before you put in your proper heavy spring feed. Black and green is another one. This one has no NPK in it at all. This is just totally iron and magnesium. So this is a classic green up fertilizer or blackening. So this will cause no growth, but this will cause the grass to go really dark green. And the rate that you apply it affects how much blackening you get. So if you go on at the lower rate, which is 25 grams per square metre, you'll just get green up. If you do 35 grams per square metre or even 40, you will get definite blackening. So this is a really good one for moss treatments, for example, but you must keep this away from the patios and the driveways and the hard surface areas. Just make sure that if you're applying this, that you're going to either brush or blow it off of any of those hard surfaces, because it will cause staining, which is quite hard to get rid of. So that's black and green. Next we have autumn green, which is not technically a winter fertilizer. You'll see the nitrogen total on this one is 10%. So it's a little bit high, but you can apply autumn green now, and you could apply autumn green probably towards the end of February, March. It depends on the temperature and say whether we get any snow or frost. But the nice thing to sort of do with this is to compare it to 6510. This has got some coated nitrogen in it. So of that 10% nitrogen, half of it, 5, is coated Nutrilon V90. That is our polymer coated urea, and the other half is ammoniacal nitrogen, which is very readily available to plants. So if you were to put this on now, it will feed the grass, in the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks, and then it has a bit of an extended release. That V90 is temperature controlled. So whilst it's not going to cause that amount of nitrogen is not going to cause the grass to grow too fast and cause any problems, applying this now is fine, because by the time it gets colder in the next 6+ weeks, the V90 will release a lot less nitrogen and it will take it through to winter. So we see a lot of this autumn green going on the lawns this time of year. We also see it going on the other side of Christmas, kind of like February, because again, it will release a bit of nitrogen for a bit of early season growth. And then that V90, as it starts to warm up, releases even more nitrogen. So autumn green is definitely one to bear in mind as well. And this comes available in a larger grade or a smaller grade. And like many of the other spring summer fertilizers that we have, we've often always offered in 2 granule sizes. And which one you choose, it kind of just depends on your personal preference. It's very difficult for us to just say, okay, all of Smart Lawn is going to be 1 granule size, because there's benefits and drawbacks to either one of them. So many of you will have a preference. When we talk about the fertilizers with iron in it, so for example the 6510 6FE or the black and green, those are only ever available in the smaller grade, and that is because we don't want to cause any speckling. When you have, for example, 30 grams per square metre of fertiliser, if you have it in smaller granules, you're going to get a lot more individual granules covering that square metre than if you had the larger granules. I think from memory, per square metre of graded, it's something like 70 granules, and for the mini grade, it's something like 280 or something. So if you have very hungry lawn and you put a larger granule size on it at sort of a lower rate, you get sort of like patches where you get little bits of green here and there, and the moss wouldn't get even coverage of the iron. So that's why some of them are only available in the smaller grade. That's a very quick explanation of that. So we said about the 6510, sometimes people don't want to apply granular iron. So this is why we also have liquid options. We have a pre-mixed liquid in a can, liquid iron 6% Fe, and we also have the soluble one. So obviously you can make up your own liquid iron with the soluble. It works out a lot better cost-wise for you, but there is the extra work involved. The liquid iron has got an extra percentage of manganese and a little bit of nitrogen for a little bit of growth, but at those application rates, it's not going to be so much that you cause any soft growth or disease issues. So the liquid iron is quite simple. You just pour that into your knapsack and you top it up with water. The soluble iron, again, you need to sort of weigh that out. Usually what we recommend is that you do a bit of preparation at home. So maybe you get some weighing scales, get like a plastic scoop or something, a clear plastic scoop, weigh out what you know you need to go into your knapsack for 200 square meters, or whether it's a full knapsack you want to make up, and then fill it to that weight on the scales, and then draw with a Sharpie around that scoop, whatever, so that when you're out in the field or the lawn, you can just scoop it and put it in and then fill it up with cold water. We sell the green slushy soluble iron. You might be familiar with more of a sort of dried, pale, free-flowing product. It's the same thing, so it's still 20% Fe, but ours is already, it's got a lot more water in it, so it's easier to dissolve, especially in cold water. With the dry one, sometimes it can be a bit difficult to dissolve it. You kind of need warm water to go with that one, which is fine if you're, you know, at your storage area or whatever, and you're making that knapsack up. But if you're at a customer's lawn and you've only got access to an outside tap, and it's November and it's like 6 degrees outside, you need to make sure that the soluble iron that you've got will dissolve. So that's why we sell that particular one. It's also cheaper because the dried one has been dried in a kiln and tumbled, and there's lots of extra processing going in it to make sure it's not wet. So that's why we do that soluble one. One thing to note with this soluble iron product is it does tend to get a bit clumpy. So if it's been sat in your garage, maybe under a few bags for a few months, there could be clumps in there. It doesn't affect its use. You can usually break the clumps up with something like a plastic knife or something. Don't use any metal instruments. Just keep some plastic things that you can use to break the lumps up with, because it does tend to corrode things quite quickly. So keep away your like best kitchen forks and things. Don't use those in the soluble iron. So there's the two options. The liquid iron is just a lot easier, but again, there's sort of cost implications with that. I've put the application rates there just in case you want to know them, and that is giving you. Now I think that's set to give you the same amount of iron, is it? Set up to give you the same amount of iron per hectare. So 300 mil per 100 meters squared in the liquid, or 90 grams per 100 meters squared in the soluble iron. Give you the same amount of iron per square meter. So again, liquid versus granular. Why would you want to choose liquid? Why would you want to choose granular? So with a liquid fertilizer, if you are applying via knapsack, which most of you do, it's much easier to control where it's going because you have it in your hand and you're spraying, and you can avoid all of the patio areas. Whereas with a granular, if you're doing a push spreader, a broadcast spreader, it will fly out all directions. And if you have a deflector on the side of your spreader, that's fine, but sometimes they don't work. Sometimes that causes problem with more fertilizer ending up on the left or right hand side of the path, and then you end up maybe with like too much blackening or bit of scorch on that side. So this is a problem. You can brush off granular iron products, but in the winter sometimes it's a bit damp and it might be quite difficult to do that. I know a lot of people do have petrol blowers, and they've used those with quite some success. So it is personal preference, really. I know in the past some people find that technicians can struggle with controlling granular iron application, and if you are going to experience a problem with a complaint with staining, it's probably going to be because somebody didn't realise what was going to happen if they didn't. They tried to avoid the patio. So try to make sure if you have any technicians that they are totally trained on iron staining and also avoiding it, and that you look up how you can correct iron staining if you do end up with some, because it is quite a common thing to have. So with liquid, we get faster green up. So when you are spraying a liquid fertilizer onto a lawn, if it's sat on that leaf in water droplets, a certain amount of it can go directly into the leaf and be taken up by the plant. So with some products, you can get a green up with a liquid application within hours. Whereas with a granular product, you are probably looking at more like a week, a few days, it depends on the rain, but liquid is much faster, granular is a little bit slower. Having said that, the granular lasts longer because with the liquid you're applying grams, like say a fraction of the NPK that you would be applying to with a granular product. So the granular product lasts longer, but the liquid is faster. Again, it also affects how the moss is affected. So if you're applying a liquid and you're spraying on the lawn, it blackens just the top layer of the moss. So if you go along and you scarify later, you'll find there's still quite a lot of green moss that's coming up. Whereas if you apply a granular iron product, because of the quantity of the iron you're putting down and also the way that it can sort of wash down through the layers, it will blacken most of the moss all the way down. So that affects how much, how effective it is at blackening the moss. The inputs, here we got the input. So less input, better for soil life with liquids. So generally you're applying 2 to 5 kilos per hectare of iron with a liquid, and with a granular you're doing 18 to 36 kilos per hectare. So it's there's a lot more iron going in with a granular product, so you get a lot more blackening. But iron sulfate is not particularly good for soil life. So if you're really looking for, if your customers are asking for like organic lawn treatments, or they just want to know that you're being a bit more responsible with your treatments, you're taking into account the soil health, etc., then a liquid is the way to go, because you're just going to be putting just enough to get a job done, and that's it. You're not sort of filling the soil with iron. You can also get problems where you put too much iron sulfate into soil, causes anaerobic conditions, makes the soil go black, a bit sort of sulfur smelly. Hydrogen sulfide starts to be produced, and that kills off lawns. So it's not a good idea to put loads of iron sulfate on. Some golf greens have this, is a common problem, where the greenkeepers will put on iron like year after year, and if it's not sort of kept on top of, they end up with black layer. It kills off the grass. So liquid is better for that as opposed to granular. And again, we talked about application methods. Knapsacks, they're heavy, they go on your back, possibly not suitable for everybody. Granulars are a bit easier because you pour it into the spreader's got wheels and you push it along. It's all personal preference. And then the last thing is when you use them, scarification. So get asked a lot, should I use fertilizers before or after scarification? What's the best way to do it? Well, I think it depends on which type of product you're using. So if you're using a liquid, I already said that it will just blacken the top layer of the moss. So with a liquid product, it makes more sense to scarify first. So you can do this all in one trip. You can scarify first and then go along and spray the iron, and that will hit the remaining moss that's in the lawn after that scarification. Whereas with the granular, if you want to use that for best effect, you want to use it before you scarify. So you can apply that maybe 2 weeks before you intend to go back and scarify it. By that point, all the moss will have been blackened and really hit. And you can then, after your scarification, you could do maybe some overseeding. This obviously depends what time of year it is, because you wouldn't overseed right now. But in the spring, say if you were going to go in very early March, you might do the iron first, then go back scarify, then overseed. So it depends. When you're going to scarify depends on what kind of iron you're using, if you're using any iron. So here's a bit of a roundup of the winter fertilizers that we have in the Smart Lawn range. The first and last, again, 6510 with or without the 6FE, only comes in the 1 to 2 millimeter granule size. And same with the black and green, which is a 12% Fe, 5% magnesium oxide. That's 1 to 2 millimeter as well. The autumn green is available in both, and there's various different reasons why you might choose mini or graded. That's completely up to you. And then again, we talked about the liquid iron and the soluble iron. So this is just a quick view of the application period you might use for those. The autumn green is something that you can apply. Well, really, you can apply any time of year, potentially, possibly not in the drought sort of months, which is June to August. But the rest of these would be September to March is perfectly acceptable times to apply these products. December, January, be a bit careful depending on the frost, of course. Right, so that's the fertilizers. Let's just take a quick look at biostimulants, because these are also products that are becoming more and more relevant to today's lawn care, especially as customers want something that's a bit more natural, a bit more sort of organic. So we have two biostimulants in the Smart Lawn range. The seaweed extract. Seaweed is a classic biostimulant that's been used for decades, maybe even hundreds of years, for growing anything. So seaweed is a classic one. Onyx is our unique liquid biostimulant. Of the two of these, if you were to go for one as a winter treatment, I would recommend the seaweed. It tends to have a better result when it's applied in the winter compared to the Onyx. The Onyx is a little bit of nitrogen, a little bit of potassium. It's got amino acids in there which feed the bacteria in the soil, but then in the winter, the soil bacteria are not really doing a lot. So Onyx liquid is really more of a spring, late summer, autumn biostimulant, whereas the seaweed extract, that is the one you want to do in the winter, and that helps the grass to prepare itself through the winter into the spring. It's got all of the natural nutrients in there, some amino acids, some trace elements, etc. This is the one that we find works best. And the main thing with seaweed extract is seaweed itself grows in a very harsh environment. The Ascophyllum nodosum, which is the type of seaweed this is made from, it grows kind of on the beach, on the rocks, where sometimes it's covered by seawater, sometimes it's underwater, sometimes it's in the baking sun, sometimes it's exposed to freezing temperatures, sometimes it's in the shade, sometimes it's in the blasting sun. So it has a really hard life, and in order to combat that, it produces a lot of stress-relieving compounds inside it. And so when you mill up seaweed and you put it on the turf, these compounds are what gets imparted to the grass. And this is why we use seaweed on turf quite so much. It also grows really well around our coastline. This particular one is in Northern Ireland. It's harvested there, and it's milled and processed. And then, we bottle it up and sell it out. So the seaweed one is the one for your winter treatments. The other things you can be doing in the winter, you can do aeration. I would recommend solid tine aeration rather than hollow tine. It's not the time of year to be disturbing the soil too much. The smallest tines you have, the better. So that will just help to let some air into the soil and potentially help with the drainage over the winter, especially if you have quite clay soils. That's quite useful. It will help to avoid any sort of waterlogged conditions that breed anaerobic bacteria that cause problems for the grass. So solid tine would be fine, doesn't cause very much damage. Aeration, not the hollow tine aeration, basically. You can top dress in the winter, that's fine. A nice organic top dressing if you want to do that. Alternatively, if you have very clay soil, go for a top dressing that is mostly sand, 70% sand, 30% organic, or 30% loam. And if you have a very clay, sandy soil, go for a more organic, heavy top dressing. So if you have a top dressing supplier, they can talk to you about this. But what you would like to do with your top dressing is amend your soil texture so that it will hold on to as many nutrients for you as possible. We have some information about that, about soil texture and top dressing in one of our new GreenBest Academy courses, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So scarification, it's probably a little bit late for scarification now in most of the UK. At least if you did it, there wouldn't be a huge amount of growth to make that lawn look very nice before December. So scarification is probably more for early spring. If you want to do autumn scarifications, it's going to be very sort of September. It depends on where you are, and obviously if you want to overseed after that, it needs to be warm enough for the seed to germinate. So scarification is now really for early spring. So where can you find more information? Let's start with the webinars. we're building up quite a nice little library of webinars. We've got all of the webinars listed on our GreenBest website under the news and events section, but we also keep them under the GreenBest Academy. So this is a separate website to GreenBest website, and it's www.greenbestacademy.co.uk. And we put all of our webinars up there. This webinar will be going there probably in about a month, and you can find my previous webinars there. Jack's done one on lawn care fertilizers. I've done a few. I did one about building annual treatment plans where we look at kilos per hectare of all the nutrients and what the total should be, etc. So you can go and find those there, and you can watch all of those for free. We also have 3 lawn care premium courses, which are paid online courses, and these are courses that you can do at your own pace. So they're made up of 5 to 10 minute videos. You watch them in a sequence, and then there's a little test at the end to get your certificate once you've passed. And so there's three courses available. We've got lawn grass biology, which is the sort of fairly quick, fairly simple beginner's guide to lawns and grass, how grass grows, and how to look after grass. So that one's about half an hour. It's fairly easy to do. Then you follow that up with advanced lawn nutrition, which is about an hour and a half long, and that is more detail on plant nutrients. So I talked about how grass likes to use nitrogen, but in this course we also talk about phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, copper, boron, what those nutrients do in the grass, what they're for, why they need it, how much they like to use of it, where those nutrients come from. We look at the nitrogen cycle and how nitrogen is naturally provided in the soil and why you need to put more nitrogen in. So that's more detailed if you really want to understand why you apply fertilizers and you want to be able to answer questions that customers ask you about, why have you put that on? Why? How is this product different from that one? That's a really good one, really good course to do. And more recently, we finished the Understanding Lawn Soil course. And this one is really getting to grips with soil itself rather than the lawn plant. Of course, the lawn is growing in the soil, so the soil is important. So we look at soil texture, that is, whether it's clay or sandy, and how that affects the growth of the lawn and how that affects the fertilizers that you apply. We look at soil pH, how that affects the fertilizers that you apply, and also what you can do to change it if you have very acidic or very basic soil. And we also look at soil biology, so I tell you all about soil bacteria, soil fungi, all the pests, how they all work to sort of create this ecosystem that is self-balancing, etc. So the Understanding Lawn Soil course is the newest one. It's about 3 hours, so it's quite a long one to do, but it is worth it. And I think if your customers are really interested in you becoming more aware of the environment and sort of more organic treatments, this is really worth doing for your business. So those are all on the GreenBest Academy. If you require any basis points, you can get those there as well. We generally tend to get our webinars basis pointed, not all of them, but if you have watched a webinar and you think you should get basis points for it, just let me know, because I can get those points sent over to you. So just quickly about GreenBest pricing, etc. So if you are already a customer, you'll be familiar with our GreenBest customer portal. If not, then I'll tell you about it a bit now. So this is our online platform where customers can log in and they can place orders, view prices, find out product information, see previous orders, and sort of check up on any news we've got. We've also currently got some clearance items that are available on the portal. So if you are a customer, please check out that. If you haven't accessed the portal already, then please call Kerry in the sales office and we'll get you set up. It's really useful for placing orders because you can order exactly what you want. You can set your delivery address and it will give you a quote for the delivery and a time scale for when that's going to arrive to you, and everything is really good. The pricing on there is always up to date. We update our pricing monthly, I believe. It's fairly regular compared to previous years where we used to do, set pricing. That's just because the prices of fertilizers these days are really quite volatile. Sometimes they go up, down. So we regularly review the prices to make sure that, we're not losing out and you're not losing out. So sometimes prices come down, which we pass on to you. And the portal, we regularly look at adding new features to that. So if you're using it already and you have some feedback, please let me know, because I would like to be able to make sure this is a product that a feature that people enjoy using. And so I must mention recently that the transport prices have been increased. That was in the last few months. Again, the portal does this automatically, so it's quite good for you to put your orders on there, because you'll see what the price is going to be that you'll pay. So if you would like to contact us, there are a few ways for you to do that. You can call us. That's our number is 01963 364 788. The email address is sales@greenbest.co.uk. You're quite welcome to email us with your questions. The GreenBest website has a lot of information about smart lawn products. That's also where you can request a copy of the smart lawn product guide. And if you want to learn more about the products, then I recommend you check out the GreenBest Academy, which is where we have all of our webinars. If you want to meet us in person, if you're local, you are welcome to arrange a meeting to pop in and see us at the office. Otherwise, there's a few events that myself, Jack and Kerry will be attending over the next year. So we've got the UK Lawn Care Association Conference, which is the very end of January. That's in Tewkesbury. So that's if you are a UK Lawn Care Association member. We'll be at BTME in Harrogate. That's the week before UK Lawn Care Association Conference. That's sort of late January. And then Groundsfest is September time. That is Midlands. And then some point before Groundsfest will be the UK Lawn Care Association Summer Festival, which we are likely to attend as well. Jack is currently at Saltex in Birmingham. So we do that every year as well. So if you want to come to Saltex next year and see us, then please do that. We're quite happy if you want to just turn up on the day and have a chat, or if you want to contact us in advance to book a time to sit down, that's completely up to you. We're quite happy for you to do that. So thank you very much for joining me today. If you have any questions and you haven't asked them during the chat, please feel free to email us. If you are watching the replay version of this, there might be a chat box for you to pop your question in, and that will be emailed to us, and then we'll get back to you. Or we can you can email sales@greenbest.co.uk. If you're watching on the Academy, you can email us in the sales office and we'll get back to you. So that's all from me today. Thank you very much for watching, and join me again for the next one.